Okay, I think we are finally on our last video for the College Algebra Trig Final Exam Review. We're going to start off with number 30. How long will it take an investment of $6,000 to grow to $12,000 if it earns 3% interest compounded continuously? 31 and 32 we haven't looked at yet, so on the final, do your best. If you get it right, it's extra credit. If not, I will curve it, okay? So I'm erasing those right now, or getting rid of them at least, so we don't see them. So you have to read these and read how is it compounded. This says compounded continuously, which tells me right off the bat that we're using A equals P times E to the RT, okay? And you have to figure out what goes where. How long will it take an investment of $6,000? That's what you started with. That's your principal, your P. To grow to $12,000, that's your end amount, your A. If it earns 3% interest, now 3% or 3 is not your rate. You have to move the decimal 2 places, so 0.03 is your rate. So I'm going to plug in everything I know. 12,000 equals P, which is 6,000, times E to the R, which is 0.03, times T, which we don't know. So this is an exponential function because my variable is up in the exponent. And once you have these, you want to get whatever's being raised to the variable power alone. So in our case, I need to get E alone. So first I'm going to divide each side by 6,000. And I get 2 equals E to the 0.03t. And the reason you want to get it alone is you can take the log or natural log of each side. Because remember, the inverse of an exponential is a log, and vice versa. Because I have E, I'm going to take the natural log of each side. Once I take the log or natural log, it allows me to take this exponent and move it out front. So the natural log of 2 equals 0.03t times the natural log of E. Now, if you remember us talking during class when we learned about this, the natural log of E is just 1. So anything times 1 is just itself. So it essentially goes away. Okay? So I'm left with the natural log of 2 equals 0.03t. So I just need to divide by 0.03 to get t alone. So in my calculator, I am typing in the natural log of 2 divided by 0.03, and we find that 23.10 is going to equal t. So in 23 years, that's how long it will take to double the money. I am moving on. If you need to write this down, please pause the video. 33 says, if g of x equals 2 to the x plus 3 minus 1, so I'm going to write this a little bigger because it's really hard to see. So g of x equals 2 to the x plus 3 minus 1 is a transformation of f of x equals 2 to the x. Then g of x is shifted, and it just says dot dot. So they want you to know how is it shifted. Shifts happen when I add or subtract things in from my parent function, that 2 to the x power. So the plus 3 does something to my graph, as well as the minus 1. Okay? So when we look at the plus 3, it's up with x, which means it moves in the x direction. So I'm moving either left or right. Remember, x's are stupid and they do the opposite. So even though it's positive, we're going to move it negative direction, which is left 3. So it shifts left 3. This minus 1 is not up top with x, so it doesn't affect the x's, it affects the y's, and y's do what they're told, so it moves down 1. I am going to erase this so we have room to work on 34. Pause if needed, please. 34 says, write f to the third power. Oh, I guess we didn't need all that room after all, sorry. Write 5 to the third power equals 125 in log form. So what I normally do is write down my log first. I have a hard time going backwards. So when I look at this, they originally give me 5 to the third power equals 125. Well, we say it's when I swirly, that's how I taught you guys to rewrite from exponential to logarithmic, we started with the base, and that's going to be your base here. So the 5 goes here. Whatever exponent you're raising to goes on the other side of the equal sign, and whatever it equals is what you're taking the log of. And you can check this by doing a swirly, right? 5 to the third power would have to equal 125. Okay, number 35. Students in an algebra class were given an exam. They were then tested monthly with an equivalent exam. The average score for the class was given by the human memory model f of x equals 85 minus 16 log base 10 of x plus 1, where x is the time in months. What is the average score after 2 months? So all this long word problem, and all they're saying is what is the average score after 2 months, and they say x is the time in months. All they're asking you to do is plug in 2 for x. So I'm going to plug in my calculator, 85 minus 16 log base 10 of 2 plus 1. Now, it's a base 10, so I don't really have to worry about it. I can literally just type in 85 minus 16 times the log, because remember, log without having a base, we know is base 10, of 2 plus 1, you end up with 77.37. Okay? Questions? Well, I'm not in class, so I can't take questions. But we're going to look at number 36. 36 says, write the following as a single log. Okay, the first thing I have to do is make sure they're all to the same base, which they are. They're all to the third power. Any number that's out front, I'm going to use my properties of logs and take it and make it an exponent. So I end up with log base 3 of x to the third plus log base 3 of 7 minus log base 3 of x to the 1/2. Notice I didn't take the signs with them. Now I double check all the logs have the same base, so I'm going to rewrite it as one single log of base 3. When they're being added, like x to the third and 7, I can multiply them. I'm not going to write x to the third times 7 because we write the coefficient and then the variable. Okay. Now when it's subtracted or has a minus in front of it, it's going to go on the bottom of the fraction. So x to the 1/2. Okay. It probably won't be left like this. It's multiple choice. I should simplify this. So log base 3 of 7. When I have the exponents on top of each other, or when they're being divided, you subtract them. So if I do x to the 3 minus 1/2 is 2.5, or it's probably x to the 2/5. And we're not going to go much farther than that. One of those will be your answer choices. Okay. This says, for 37, solve for x. I am going to have to erase this green piece, so pause it if you need to. Solve for x. Here's the equation. I'm going to write it bigger because it just seems awfully hard to see. It says 7 natural log of 2x equals 28. This is 37. So I need to get the natural log alone, so I'm going to divide by 7. I get the natural log of 2x equals 4. Now that the log or natural log is alone, I can write it in exponential form. So remember, natural log has a base e. And this is simply talking about swirling, like I showed you in class. Ooh, let's not do that. Let's swirl. Okay, so I get e to the 4th power equals 2x. So in my calculator, I'm going to put in e to the 4th power, and then I'm going to divide that by 2. And if you don't round, if you put e to the 4th power divided by 2 in your calculator, you get 27.29, which actually becomes 27.30. I'm going to move on to the next page. Please pause if you need to wait. 38, solve for x. Log of 3x plus 7 plus log of x minus 2 equals 1. So if I have logs, I want to make it into one log, so I need to condense it, and they're being added with the same base. So I'm going to rewrite it as one log, where they get multiplied. So 3x plus 7 times x minus 2 equals 1. Okay. I'm going to remember I have a base of 10 since nothing is written. And now that I only have one log, I can go ahead and swirl. So I get 10 to the first power equals 3x plus 7 times x minus 2. I'm going to go ahead and erase 39 because, again, we haven't learned that, okay, and leave room for us to work. So 10 to the first power is simply 10. And I'm going to FOIL or double distribute 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x. 7 times x is a positive 7x. And 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. Couple of things I'm going to do here. I'm going to combine like terms, and I'm going to subtract this 10 because this is a quadratic. It's raised to the second power. I can't solve it unless it's set equal to 0. When I combine these two, I get plus x, and negative 14 minus 10 is negative 24. So I have to solve it. A is not 1. I really don't want to deal with factoring, so I'm going to use the quadratic formula, which says the opposite of b, which, let me remind you where I find a, b, and c from. A is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, including its sign, and c is the constant, the one without an x at all. So the opposite of b is not 1, it's actually negative 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now in class I talked to you guys about doing just what's underneath the square root, okay, so we don't mess this up, right? And when you do just what's underneath the square root, you end up with 289 underneath the square root. So negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 289 over 6, okay? And we need to find the square root of 289, which happens to be 17. So I'm left with negative 1 plus or minus 17 over 6. And you should break it down because there's two problems here because I have the plus or minus. So negative 1 plus 17 over 6 and negative 1 minus 17 over 6, which is going to give me 16 over 6, which is going to be 8/3. And this one is going to give me negative 18 over 6, which is going to give me negative 3. So these are my two answers. I am going to have to stop here because the video is going to run out of time. One more and then I promise we're done.